Hello, it's Peter Wright and Kathleen Beauvais in Ontario, Canada. And again, for the second or third time this winter, a snowy Ontario, Canada. We're pretty white outside. This is the show that provides you with a wider range of actionable business ideas and tips than you'll find practically anywhere else on the internet. We always have interesting guests for you, but a quick reminder before we introduce guests and co hosts if you like our show and you want to keep aware of our forthcoming guests and who's coming next week, sign up for our newsletter. There's a sign up form on the bottom of our website, theyakkingshow.com. So, first for me is to introduce co host Kathleen Beauvais from Waterloo, Ontario. Hi, Kathleen. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Peter. Thank you so much. And thank you all so much for tuning into our show. We so appreciate you and we love reading your comments. So please keep those coming. And if anyone is interested in being a guest on our show, don't hesitate to visit us at theyakkingshow.com. All you need to do is click on the contacts tab and fill out a very short application form, and we would love to hear from you. And as Peter mentioned, we do have another special guest with us today. We have the great pleasure of welcoming Dr. Patricia Boulogne. Hello, Dr. Pat. How are you?
Hi, I'm doing great.
Now,
Good.
Dr. Pat is the founder of the Health Team Network. This is an organization that provides a range of health services, and we're going to get into that in just a moment. But first, Dr. Pat, can you give us a little bit about your background and what led you to come out of retirement and do the work that you're doing now? And also, what motivates you as a doctor and a business person?
Um, well, um, what got me here today is that it's been a process, and even as a child I was always interested in science. So did the science fairs and did well at some of them, at least one of them especially. And I've always been interested in like why things happen. And I was the teacher's nemesis in the back of the class with my hand up going, why is that? Can you explain it again? And they really sometimes either loved me or else that's probably why I ended up with a C in that class. But I ended up, and I went to a Catholic school, so that we're, for 12 years before I went to college. But I really I've always, have been service oriented and business oriented. I had a lemonade stand when I was 5 years old. I don't remember what happened to that money. My mother took it, but I don't know what happened to that money. And things and other natures, things that we did, shoveling snow, and and those type of things that started early in my age. And and then I always had my father as for influence. And his one thing was when I told him that I didn't want to go to college, when he asked me what college I was going to go to, he took me into Detroit and went down the street that the riots started in 1967 and parked in front of a house and said, "Get out." And I just said, "Out." And he said, "Well, if you're not going to go to school, you might as well live on the street." And and he said, pick a house and and I'll buy it for you with the money that I saved for you to go to school. And I said, "I'll go to the college of your choice." I think it only took me a New York, nanosecond to answer that question. So I've had, and he always challenged me. That's something that I always respond to, which is probably why in helping, people reach their greatest goals in less time, I love that challenge. As I'm always thinking there's got to be a simpler, faster, quicker way to get from A to Z and be able to, still survive and be in really great shape so that you really truly can enjoy your life. So those are, some of the things. And one of the things that motivates me besides that is that making sense and getting to that A to Z thing is I like to see people thrive. I like to make massive differences in people's lives so that it's a non-event. Things that, it's just like, I have this genetic predisposition for this, but I do this to improve my constitution. So I have a different outcome. I don't have to have a prescribed outcome because of something that's going on in my environment, because I'm altering my environment and being being more synergistic with it by looking at the foods that you eat, the air that you breathe, the quality of things that you have around you for cleaning, and those types of purposes. And then, of course, having control of your mind for mindset mastery.
Of course. So,
Yeah, absolutely.
you've mentioned that you came out of retirement to do your work,
Oh,
to
yes,
do the work that you're doing. So
I
tell
did.
us just a touch on that.
Well, I decided I was burnt out. And I was in LA at a New Year's Eve party, and there were two bowls on this table. And I was thinking, one of them was caviar, and the other one was a bowl of cocaine.
Mm.
And I said, and a friend of mine was like not an MC at the House of Blues. She was the like the maitre d' on the female side. Can't remember the name of it right now. But at any rate, we saw Brian Setzer. We went to this house, and I walked in there, and I'm looking down at it, and I goes, why do they have sugar, a bowl of sugar like that on the table? I had no clue what it was. It was like right over my head. And this guy looked at me, and he said, "It's Coke." I said, "Oh, you mean like in the in raw form?" And I'm thinking, "Oh man, Pat, this is like not good." And then I realized at that point, I don't want to live my life like that. I don't want to be, those aren't my people. And they had these beautiful fireworks going on outside in downtown LA that where this house was situated, which is a big house on the side of the hill. I could see these beautiful fireworks. So I went out and sat by myself out there and I thought, I'm out of here. I said, I'm done doing this. I'm done doing it in the way that I'm doing it. So I went back, sold my practice, moved to Boston. And when I moved to Boston, I walked around downtown a lot and I saw a lot of different people looking at their faces, like nobody's home. You could go up to somebody and almost like smile right in their face. And there was like no response. And and it was repetitious, and I saw it, no matter if I was in a area called the Back Bay or where I lived at, which was downtown by the financial district. And the financial district, everyone was stressed. And so I used to people watch down there. So my big observation was that there was like nobody home. These people looked really sick to me. A lot of them had like discolorations, like grayish tones or like kind of greenish tints. I thought it was pretty disturbing because I thought I lived on Cape Cod before this, so I had no exposure to a large city. But I thought, who the heck wants to really live in a large city and work there? That was one of my realizations. And then I also read an article at the same time from the CDC where there was over 2,500 participants, and all those participants in that study, out of 212 potentially dangerous chemicals, all of them tested positive in their urine, in their also in their blood.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
I was so disgusted that I thought, oh my God, all these people around here are toxic and they don't even know it.
Mhm.
That's
It's
right.
like been so insidious, like one little thing after another little thing. And they just really didn't realize it. Like, all of a sudden I started getting, a cold like every winter, or I got laryngitis in the fall. Especially for me, I got laryngitis in the fall, but I was already there for 6 years. It wasn't until I went to the 7th year that I realized how much mold and mildew were on Cape Cod and how horrible it was for your health and in expressing better health. And furthermore, it made, all those situations make for cloudy thinking, which is called, they not later called it, brain fog.
Mhm.
And it also sets you up to have a lot of chronic illnesses and diseases that whatever your weak genetic link was, it started to play that out eventually. And they called it just getting old.
Yes.
Mhm.
And I didn't buy it because I had, patients that came into my office. I had an 80-year-old woman who, she had a little bit thing going on with her neck. And I said, can you touch your toes? She goes, oh yeah. She just bent over and put her hands behind her ankles. And I thought, wow. I said, do you do yoga? She goes, I do. And I said, oh my God. I go, you have more flexibility than I do. And I could touch my hands to the floor, and I was just so astounded by that. So there was, how you take care of yourself is really important. There's three things and three reasons why people basically get sick. One's trauma, one's toxins, and the other ones are your thoughts. And your thoughts can undo whatever you do to fix all the toxins in your environment.
Mhm.
And your traumas, because traumas create inflammation, and the first inflammation comes from when you're born. 9 out of 10 children have some type of cervical damage in the birthing process. And so you're starting your life off at zero, like looking at all these other things that are happening, to you. And then, with the toxins from, things that are additives in foods. If you go, even down in South Africa where you're from, Peter, there's, if you read labels of, Heinz ketchup in England, and I'm going to presume where, you're from in South Africa, then I'm going to say, here, our list is a lot longer, and there are words that you've never heard of before and or can pronounce.
Right.
And if you can't pronounce them, I don't care if you can ever pronounce them. I do care if you know what the side effects of them are. And so I always have clients that I speak to. It's like, okay, let's make an ingredient list. And, and they're going, oh, it's tedious to do that. It is. I said, but it's going to save your life. What people realize, it was like oh my God, I had a client from South Africa. And I love her to death. She has said to me, she goes, wait a minute, before we even start, do you know there's sodium dioxide in lemon juice? What's it doing in lemon juice? And because lemon juice should just be lemon juice. And a woman that I know walked up to me, the woman in the Airbnb I'm in right now, she walks up to me with a glass, because I said you should only buy peanut butter in glass, in glass jar. And she said, it just has peanuts in it. And I was looking at her, I go, and that's all it should have in it is just peanuts. But it was just, and she said, did you ever read the label on Skippies? I said to her, I have. I don't buy Skippies, and I don't rarely ever buy peanut butter unless it's from organic. You have to have organic peanut butter, because they spray it. Anything that comes in the States, they spray it. And in Canada too, right? So I mean, the list could go on. We could stay on that topic for hours.
For sure.
But I'm amazed that people don't realize that. I mean, look at the chocolate study that they just came out with, that it has so much chocolate that we have lead and cadmium in it. Those are two of the four top, the heavy metals that people get in their bodies. And you're feeding it to your kids, you're eating it yourself, and you think you're doing something good, but they never tell you the source of the cacao, and some foods have lead in it anyway. I mean, it's just normal, but, having, 246% more than it's supposed to, I'm going, oh my God, we could go on for food for that part of it. That's me crazy.
Absolutely. Not to mention the mercury in the mouth, right?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. That too.
I was going to ask you why people get sick. You've answered that very, very well. So I'm going to make an observation that I'd like you to comment on. I spent most of my life in Africa, as I said before we started the show, and I don't recall a single case of a Black African complaining of allergies of any sort, right? And on my farm, I employed 180 people, all Black. So we had something like 300 living on the farm with extended family. And they did get sick and they got problems, but they didn't get allergies. And because we were growing horticultural products for export to Europe, we used very few chemicals compared to North American farmers, and very strictly controlled in what we did use. We try to use natural stuff. So I believe, without any scientific knowledge of this, that a lot of the toxins you're talking about are introduced because of chemicals that are used in not only food production, but in general in the life in the first world, in America and Europe. Am I on the right track or not?
You are, and when people tell me that they have allergies, I always tell them, I said, you have problems with your gut. And they look at me and said, no, I have allergies. I said, no, you're not digesting your food. I said, you have problems in your gut. And if you have problems in your gut, because what happens is when you eat something and it normally does what it's supposed to do, it goes through the cycle and ends up out of your body one way or the other, but if there's damage along in the one cell layer lining of the intestine, in the tract, then food substances sometimes get absorbed sooner. So if you've eaten poorly and if you have damage in your gut, then those food particles go into the bloodstream, have to go to the liver. The liver's job is to detoxify and get those toxins out of your system. So they, separate, and they take those toxins and they dump them back in your intestinal tract, and they're supposed to end up in the toilet one way or the other. And the thing is that if the intestinal tract is damaged and it keeps on repeating that cycle, so what happens is that when your body starts to get overwhelmed, it stores those toxins in blood, brain, bone, and fat. It loves fatty tissue.
Yeah.
Makes
And
sense.
that's where, when I talk to people, I always talk to them like, in order to be able to detoxify your body, your gut's got to be fixed first, or else you keep on recycling, and then you like even get more overwhelmed. You want to lose weight, your gut better be in good shape to lose weight, because or else you're just going to gain all that weight right back. If you do lose weight, and if you're having a hard time losing weight, then you have, there's a fine tuning of different hormones that are in the body that create certain processes to happen at a certain time. So you can become lectin, sensitive, so it's just like your body's always going, thinking that it needs to store and not get rid of that system.
Right.
So getting it to a point to where you have the ability to burn fat as fuel, it's a process. This doesn't happen overnight, or even sometimes in 30 days.
Right.
It can be hard for people to do that.
Right. Now, let's talk about the link between diet, lifestyle, and environment, because you touched on this just a little while ago about your thoughts. So you could be eating right. You could, you could have a good environment that you're living in, but if your thoughts or any one of these things is askew, that throws everything off. Correct?
Yeah, it does. And a lot of people don't realize how much their emotions are involved. It's just like, I don't think I've ever met so many empaths in my life. It's like, and all of a sudden everybody's an empath. It's the cool thing to be, in our societies. And when people, take on, and when I learned from somebody accused me of not being an empath recently, and I said, when you're a doctor, and you listen to every person that comes in your office, going, this is what's wrong with me, this is blah, 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 and you're going on. If you don't create space energetically between you and that person and listen with a clear ear, then you absorbed some of that energy. And there's the time that I came, after working, and I had like 3 people with like blown out low backs, and I had not ever had a back problem. And my husband at the time was a chiropractor, and we were working together. And I came in the house and I said, I got to look up what this, doctor taught us about how to protect your energy while you're working, because I am exhausted. And I needed to, like, in order to stay fresh and on target and at 150%, so that when you walk from one room to another room, you can have that mind switch like that and you're sharp. You have to do things to protect yourself and also create the best difference. So a lot of times I just would do things like, and push that energy back, is what I learned to do, so that I could stay, grounded, so that I could answer questions and be present, for somebody, which is sometimes that in itself was a very healing point in time, and crossover of, because everything's energy, everything's frequency.
Sure.
Yep.
Yeah. So here's one for you, Pat. You're on the board of the African Youth Institute, I think it's called, in Ghana, and I guess you've worked quite closely with the other members of the board and with the Institute. So do you notice any major differences between the health of Africans and the health of North Americans from your work with that Institute?
Well, my job at the Institute is to try to help them create, cash flow.
Okay.
And so it isn't so much for that, but one of the reasons why I thought it was interesting to work with them is because when Williams, who was the person who asked me, who's the president, he asked me to, participate with them. And we were talking about African youth. He said that the average African youth age, that, they don't leave home until 32. And I said, my parents would have killed me. I was in the house till I was 32. But it's very common, in Africa for that. So that was the reason why I really got involved. I never, we never looked at like the health of, of the youth, for that. But then I was able to help them get, because I was in an Airbnb in the pandemic. When I was working, I was up in Boston. I got stuck up there for a bit. And one of the guys that just moved there from Australia, who
Mhm.
was a PhD from Nigeria.
Mm.
And so he was like, and he got me. We had the conversations about all this stuff. It's like no, nothing made sense. And so so I was able to get him appointed to the board, like, just because I thought it'd be good to have the second person, especially from
Mhm.
there, somewhere in Africa, be
Right.
on the board to help support, movement and things like that.
Right.
Okay. No, I just wondered. Kathleen, back to you.
So, Dr. Pat, on your website, you mentioned that by the year 2030, 50% of the population will be diagnosed with a chronic disease. And it's because of the accumulation of toxins. Now, you've already touched on toxins, especially in foods, in ingredients that we don't even know of. But there are other toxins, environmental toxins, mental toxins, really, as in negative thoughts. But can you talk to us a bit more about this and perhaps give our viewers some advice on how they can reduce these toxins?
Well, I'll give you a technique and then we'll work it backwards. And the technique
Mhm.
is when you have a toxic person around you,
Yes.
is to actually, if you think about it, when you take things to your body, you always have a tendency to either be right-handed or left-handed. And so some people I know are right-handed, but they actually, they pull into their body from the left and they assume that they're right. So it's getting intuitive in touch with that. But what you do is that you just visualize that person and you surround them like an iceberg and you push them as far as away you can possibly do. Just visualize that and then push that away. Because a lot of times toxic people, we don't realize that we're, talking to toxic people. Like, it's the person who when you get off the telephone, you want to take a bath or you want to take a shower. Um, or when you leave and you're just kind of going like, like what the heck was that? Um, and being able to protect your own energy source and keep your positive energy up, that formula that I have, positive mental attitude, a positive mindset plus wellness initiatives equals success. And that's physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, socially, and financially. You cannot think well and move well unless you have all the pieces of those puzzles put together directly. So when you're looking at toxins, I mean, and we have a lot of toxins in our environment. In this Airbnb, the guy who was here last week, spraying around the backyard, I asked him, like, so what are you spraying? And he said, Roundup. I said, how come you don't have a mask on?
Mhm.
And, and he said, well, what do you mean? I said, it's carcinogenic. And he said, and he goes, what does that mean? And I said, causes cancer. Do you want to get cancer? He said no. And I said, then you should definitely have a better mask than just the ones that they thought that they could, prevent you from getting, any COVID or any other those types of things like that. So, one of the things is that there's a lot of toxins in just driving. There's tetrachloro, hydrocarbons, that go into your gas tank. People like gas fumes,
Mhm.
And there's a lot of and people who are very sensitive to, smells and that have detox issues. So in order to, like address toxins, and looking at, because what I could be sensitive to, I could be sensitive to the smell of orange juice. And somebody else, you could sit there and you can drink, like 2 glasses of it and it doesn't even affect you. So we're all very different. It's knowing what's in your environment that actually stresses you out,
Mhm.
for that. And I mean, and something to be aware of too is like when you eat, you can eat something, and just because you didn't have a reaction to it day 1 or day 2 doesn't mean you're not going to have a reaction to it day 4, 5, or 6, or 7, or 8. It takes a while for sometimes your body to, realize, and it's because it's trying to like offset that immediately
Mhm.
upon, ingesting poisonous type things. And also we have toxins that come from, supplements that you take too. You have to read the labels and read the other ingredients, or they're called inert ingredients. Some of those things are, they're like some steroids, depending upon where they're sourced at, are considered carcinogenic. So you've got to read labels. I can't stress the importance of that. And also what each one of the ingredients are. And, just know that the FDA relabeled aspartame, and other sugar substitutes they change the name on them so that you're going like, oh, there's nothing in here. There's no name that I recognize. And that's why it's so important that if you don't recognize a name, that you actually like look it up and find out what it is.
Or
So the Go ahead.
I'm sorry, but just things like if you see on the label natural flavors or spices.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and spices is a coin toss, and plus they spray them all. The thing about, the Roundup above and beyond everything else is I think that people don't get the enormity of it. They spray vegetables, they spray them when they're growing, and then you have lots of rain, and then they spray them just before they go to harvest. So you're eating that. You're eating, Roundup, you're eating things that they're sprayed on for, insecticides, pesticides, and the such. And there's very little products out there. People say that you can take, a zeolite product, and zeolite does attract like heavy metals and it exchanges it. So it has like an aluminum. It almost looks like coral, coral,
Yeah.
and it's attached to each other. So if there's an oxygen molecule here and here, it would attach it like a bond, and it would be like this, like these two little cups hanging here, and they would have all these convolutions. So when the water washes in, there's sodium, chloride, potassium. All those cations are sitting there, and then they wash out with the water, and the heavy metals are attracted to the zeolite, and it comes in and attaches to it and doesn't ever go away. So how that gets out of your body is either two ways, either through the bladder, through the urine, or through the stools. And so if it comes through the stools, and most zeolite products are made in solution. And if it's in solution, it doesn't pass the cell membrane barrier. It's very hard for it to do that. And it primarily just takes care of the gut. And there's other zeolites. You want to look up a zeolite that it's water soluble. And the only one that I know is one that I recommend, and it's on my webpage too, for people to do their own research. And it's patented. It's something like, like 30, like, it has like 30, it has 4 patents in 32 countries, or 34 or 35 countries, and it's in the research, and it's been investigated again and again and again. It's the only zeolite I know that does what it says it's supposed to do.
Right.
Interesting.
Yeah.
It's called Clear Drops.
Clear Drops.
Good one. You have something else on your website, Pat, about 5 lifestyle solutions that can help people improve their health immediately. Do you want to tell our audience a little bit about that?
Well, I always talk about, it's important to know what health is, and so when I talk about health and what it is, I basically define it as, being at your optimal experience in life, all the time, physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. And so in order to understand that, the definition of health is your organs working 100% of the time. And, that's from Merriam-Webster's dictionary. And the medical dictionary, in WHO, says that it is not merely the absence of disease or infirmities, and it also includes things like quality of life in your environment. I always, when I say that, it goes keyword. It's a keyword here, and so people go like, well, what are you supposed to do with that information? So how I funnel it into 5 aspects is I funnel it into being, like proper diet, proper exercise, proper sleep, positive mental attitude, improper posture, which equates to proper biomechanics and also structures function. Because if you don't have good structure, you eventually not have good function. When people are like hunched over, their rib cage is going into the gut and putting pressure on those organ systems that are sitting there.
Right.
And so it's like, if you look at all the organs in the body, because the brain controls and coordinates all functions. If you look at all the organs in the body, it's like a Swiss watch, and having all those pieces of the Swiss watch working in sync with each other, and where one starts to fail, that eventually the watch will ultimately fail if you aren't careful and take care of it.
Right.
That's a good analogy. Yeah.
Well, yes, let's talk about the services you offer.
Well, one of the things I love to do, is, I work 1-to-1. I coach with the Mentor's Heart. I do small group coaching sessions. So it's just like with a group with a certain, like get me 5 people or 6 people who want to achieve the same result. I'm open to it. I don't like larger groups because I don't feel that the intimacy is not there.
Right.
I have masterminds for people who are in what I call my graduate maintenance program, for like checking in once a month type thing, and to see like, what's the best strategy. And I like making strategic solutions. So on that one-to-one level, we go into things like, diet, the whole 5 things I explained, plus also taking a look at, things that possibly could have happened. Like, why am I not successful? Like, why do every time, like I get to a certain level of a job or a certain level of money, I get fired? Like, what is it? Like, how do those pieces of the puzzle fall in? And things that, you don't think, anything of, like when you're a kid, they go, oh, just get tougher. If you're a tom, you're a tom girl, tell your tomboy. And so, there's things that happen when you're growing up. You hear your parents argue about money, and like, how do you internalize it? So every time you go out to buy something, you always feel like, I'm broke. I'm trying to, like, you're always on the hamster wheel. And you just need to get the hamster wheel to stop for a second so you can take a breath. And so, but if you look at where the source of that comes, and you can take the charge off of it, because every time that you are in a situation that you have the same emotional response, and it isn't like, oh, I feel antagonistic towards my father. It might be your husband. It might be a boyfriend. It might be the girl across the, from the counter in a store. But the same type of, like, static energy is there. It's like, if you can take that static energy off, so it no longer enters your body and stays in some organ system, and you can get rid of it, then it becomes a memory and you're not reactive to it anymore.
Right.
It's just like, there's so much of, like, so many people who are living in the past and they're stuck in the past, and they can't get past, a moment that happened in time you don't even know about.
Right.
I mean, I had a teacher who taught me that technique, who's still alive. He's one of the last chiropractors on that level that were, the keystone chiropractors, I used to call them. And, he said, I want to volunteer. So me, I'm in my hands always up, because I learned better that way, with hands-on. And so, they decided that I had this abandonment issue that happened when I was 2 years old. And I'm thinking, how am I supposed to remember what happened to me when I'm 2 years old? But I'll go with it, And when I finished the conference, I called my mother up and said, can you tell me if there's something that happened when I was 2 years old? Because, I said, did anything specific happen to me? She goes, oh yeah, you had pneumonia and we had to take you to the hospital. And when we went to the hospital, she said, well, you were there for 3 weeks,
Wow.
And I said, I don't think I could understand, like, where did I get abandonment issues from? And of course they, and back in those days, they didn't let anybody in because they thought that germs were contagious. That I'm going, but you have to understand, like, how does a germ know on the sterile ward it's not supposed to be on the other side when the people keep on walking in or out with the same shoes? And so I'm just curious. But that happened. So, what he did is, when he corrected where that emotion laid in my body, I no longer had that experience.
Hey,
And
that
it's
amazing?
just like, wow. And so I have, clients, when we do one of those sessions, they're saying, wow, I never thought about that. I had a woman who I was doing touch points on her neck for doing the same type of procedure that someone did with me. And she just jumped out of it, like literally jumped off the table, and she goes, don't touch me, and then there was a dog barking out the window. I mean, there's a sequence of things that happened with her that triggered her memory for when she was molested when she was like 13 years old. So I go, let's take the charge off of that. And I never, after we did that work, I've never saw her again. But her husband came in 6 months later with giving me flowers, and my staff thought, Dr. Pat, you got a new boyfriend, huh? So nice out with a bouquet of flowers for you. And I just went, my personal life is none of your business. Who is it? And I went up and I looked at this guy and I said, hi, I don't think I know you. And he goes, oh, you don't, but you know my wife. You helped my wife. As a matter of fact, you gave my wife back to me. And he said, I just wanted to thank you. And I just went, wow. I go, and I'm going, who's your wife? That's what,
Oh, I just got
you know,
goosebumps on that
yeah.
one. Oh, what a wonderful story that
And
is.
and so he just said, and I said, well, why don't you? Because I was leaving to go someplace. Why don't you take these flowers home to your wife? And I said, because I'm going to go away. I don't want them to die. And I go and come back. And I said, because I think it's just the intention is not useful. So let's just repeat the intention and give them to her, and he just said, okay, but and he said, but I really wanted to give them to you. And I said, you did give them to me. I said, I'm giving you to her so she can have them. And tell her you ran into me in the grocery store or something. You're
Yeah.
talking to this crazy woman in line when you're checking out. And I go, she was a chiropractor. Just, isn't your chiropractor? Wasn't her first name Pat?
Oh my goodness.
I go, you could
Yeah.
make some story up like that because you can say you've at least talked to me. So,
Yes.
and then, he was just like, he goes like, I just can't thank you so much, and he just left. But I had a lot of those situations happen,
Right.
with people and being able to, have that like turnaround, like take that edge off for them so that they saw a bigger picture.
Amazing.
Mm.
Dr.
That is
Pat,
incredible.
we could, go on and on and on and talk about this, and I wish we could, but we are running a bit short on time. And I know that Peter has a burning question that he'd like to ask you. So
I'm going to jump in with my burning question. So, Dr. Pat, we ask all our successful guests, and you're clearly right up amongst the highest group of those successful guests,
Oh, thank you.
whether they're, in your opinion, and with all the work you've done with such a wide range of people, is there one characteristic, mindset, or habit that sets successful people, and I mean successful, healthy, well balanced, not just wealthy people, apart from those who remain average and never really make it out of the rut that a lot of people tend to live their lives in? Is there one thing, or is it a lot more complicated than that?
I think it's pretty simple. I mean, in a way, the concept is simple, like belief, desire, expectation, and persistence
belief, desire.
Mm-hmm.
and action.
Oh,
And
oh,
action,
yes.
yeah.
Because you could aspire for something, but if you're not inspired and inspired so much that you want to take action and or motivated to take that action. So, you have to believe it, you have to desire it. And the desire has to be, ignited somehow, some way, and then you have to expect it. Because if you don't expect it, when I went in to take exams when I was in school, I thought I'm never going to pass chiropractic school. And then I decided to go study acupuncture and get, a master's and my doctorate in acupuncture. And I studied in Mandarin.
Wow.
I came out totally burnt out from that one, but I just thought before I would take an exam, I would, talk to myself all the way when I was going to take the exam because I already studied, so I deserved to pass this test with flying colors. There's no question that they can ask me that I will not know the answer to, and and when I'm in that realm, when I'm in that groove or in that vibe or whatever vortex or whatever you want to call it, I sailed. I had a 4.0 in studying all Chinese medicine until I took my one exam that I think I got something like a 90, like a 90 a 98.7 on the exam. I said, can't you find 0.3 to give me in order to get the A for this to keep my 4.0? Because I thought I've never had a 4.0. And this guy looked at me and he said, Pat, and he said, I would if I could. He goes, but I have to turn this over to the registrar's office. If you want to go talk to them or the dean, you can do that. And I already knew the answer, what she was going to tell me anyway. But
Right.
because I'm the why person. Like, why do you have to do that? Like, well, does it make sense to me? Things have got to make sense to me. So
Sure.
and one of the things that, people have to get their common sense back on.
Mhm.
That'd be the number 5 part of that. Because what I see is I see a lot of people not being able to put right side to left side, and having the ability to make sense of whatever the challenge is,
Mhm.
or you want to drive across town, you always make a decision about which way you want to go, and what's the most simplest, easy, fastest way to get there. Then you want to be able to do that so you can get unstuck, so you can do the rest of your day expeditiously,
Right.
and so and that mindset part of that being so solid that, I can, I will, I must. And it's just like, and when you don't, you kind of go like, okay, so what could I have done better? So instead of saying, screw it, I'm going to quit, it's just like, you're like, what is it that I could have done better? What did I learn from
Yep.
this,
Yeah.
you know? And then I used to write it out because I was a touch. I had to see it, feel it, hear it. And so I would write it out and I would look at it and I would think, I'd ponder it and think about it. And then, you know, it's just like whatever first came to me of what I learned, that's what I decided that I learned. And if I repeated the process for some reason, I would go through the same problem. Well, what is it? I'm like, I learned that part, but what did I miss?
Right.
And then you can adjust your sail.
Sure.
So if you
Sure.
know, like all tides bring boats higher level. If I go high, I bring everybody with me.
Right.
Mhm.
I don't leave it, I don't like the idea of like leaving anybody behind because of that. So, you know, helping people have a better understanding about how to do that. I love to see people have those massive breakthroughs. And when they have that haha moment, you're going like, wow, that's what makes it worth it.
That's right.
For sure.
Oh, well done.
Well,
Excellent.
yes.
Yeah.
How do people contact you?
I would tell you, I just updated my website.
Okay.
And so my website is healthteamnetwork.com. And a lot of information, how to get a hold of me on LinkedIn, Facebook, you know, Instagram, how to work with me, library, books that I recommend, things like, you know, and you know, like making contact with me. On my opening page, there's a microphone, so you can practice your public speaking and hit that mic and ask me a question, and that will come to my inbox of my you know, email, and I have the ability to be able to handle answering that. So I would say that, and if you're on LinkedIn, reach out.
And you work
Right.
with people from all over the world.
I do. I do.
Excellent.
I've had my very first coaching client was from Glasgow, and he was from the Kingdom. And Peter, you would know where the Kingdom is, you know, and because I said, but you're already in the UK, and he said, no, the Kingdom, you know, which is us, no, Saudi, you know, and so he was from Saudi Arabia, and you know,
Oh,
but
sorry, I'm with you. Yeah.
yeah, he said the Kingdom, and I
The
went,
kingdom.
I felt like maybe I missed geography, the geography part of that. I was absent that day that they explained that, but I thought it was pretty interesting, and you know, and you know, I'm very fascinated with how people do, why they do what they do, and then wow, is there a different way you could do it? You could still have better results in your health, you know, in all aspects of your life, and especially your wellness, and you can do it in a faster, quicker, safer way, you know, with better solutions. I think everybody should be all on board.
For sure.
Well, it was an absolute pleasure having you on the show
Wonderful.
today. And we hope to sometime have you back again. It's been wonderful having you. And thank you, for Dr. Pat. And thank you all once again for tuning into our show. And until next time, take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.